I was playing Cities Skylines this evening, and there was a big patch update that changed the way that game works. So if you had a save for a city that you were building and you load it in, then you would find that the way it works is more difficult. So financially, it's just more, I guess, in depth. Anyway, I loaded into the game. I let it run for a while, and then I realized that in the game I had a financial problem. The city just was hemorrhaging money, and nothing I really did was able to fix that, because the old version of the game was a lot easier. There was a lot more leeway to essentially waste money, make bad decisions, and not really worry about the financial ramifications of what you were doing. The game was easier to build a city in, but it wasn't as realistic. And a lot of players had said, well, we want it to be more realistic. We want it to feel a little bit more like a challenge when we play. So the developer said, okay, let's go ahead and rework the economy in that game so that it is a little more difficult, a little more realistic, and a little bit more meaningful for you to manage the virtual economy there. In any case, I thought it was interesting because to get my city to balance out, I had to completely get rid of all of my services, shut down fire departments, police departments, shut down airports, shut down subways, buses, really everything. All sorts of business administration in the city I just had to get rid of. And really, I pretty much got rid of all of it. I left nothing standing. Any optional building just got destroyed, shut down, or in some way gotten rid of, because I had to get my budget in the game to balance out. And so I got rid of all of this stuff, and then eventually balanced it out, and then started to rebuild those services back in afterwards. And I was thinking about how it's like that in life. I can say that when I went through financial challenging times in real life, the solution was not really a small step away from the precipice. It was to say, I'm going to make a change, and it's going to be dramatic. I'm going to shut everything down. I'm going to stop spending money 100%, and I'm going to do this thing that I need to do because it's not an option anymore, and I just have to do this. When we want change in our life, too often we want change, but we don't want to make a sacrifice for it. We want change, and we're willing to make little sacrifices as long as they're not anything big that's actually going to be inconvenient to us. If we want to be less overweight, we're not going to really meaningfully change our diet. We're not going to really change our routines, but we will say, okay, I'll go down the chip aisle and I'll buy the veggie straws instead of the Doritos. Like, that's the kind of level of sacrifice that we're willing to make. Or imagine somebody who says, I don't want to drink anymore. I don't want to be an alcoholic, so I will just stop going out to bars. But they're still going to go home and they're going to drink at home. Maybe it's the other way around. People start to bargain with themselves and make little compromises to find a way to say, I'm going in the right direction, but I don't have to necessarily be extreme about it. But sometimes it's just like managing the budget in that game. There's a point where things are so messed up, you just have to say drastic measures are what we're going to do. We're going to shut it all down because that's what we have to do to get to a place of baseline financial health. And then we can start working on adding the extra things back in from there. But for the greater part, we don't get there. A lot of times we wind up just saying we want change, but it's just lip service. And we don't really ever get serious. The truth is, if you want change in your life, you're going to make meaningful changes in your life so that you can have that. And if you aren't, then you haven't gotten to the place in your life where you truly have hit rock bottom and said, I actually meaningfully want to change. There's a lot of people who say they want to change, but they keep doing the same thing. If you really want change, you're going to back it up with action. And it's probably not going to be in incremental little steps. It's just going to be you stop playing around and you make a final ultimatum. You go all the way. That's hard. But it's also simple. And it's interesting how much we tend to miss out on that because we don't want to actually make sacrifices in our life. So we just say we want change and then we act surprised when it doesn't come. But the reality is we're not actually at the point where we really are serious about it. So, I think it's simple. It's simple to make commitments to change in your life if that's what you really want. But if you don't really want it, then it's never going to be simple because you're always going to come up with an excuse for why today's not the day. I remember when I used to go to church when I was a teenager, and we'd go to these camp meetings and there'd be these revival services, and the preacher would get up there and talk to people about sin, and folks would go down to the altar to devote their life to God or recommit themselves. And I was one of them, but I'd go down to the altar and try to pray my way through. And a lot of other people did that too. And so you'd go down there, you'd kneel down at the altar, and you would sort of pray for peace, basically, to try to work through whatever it is that you knew was wrong in your heart. And I guess you just wouldn't really know how to finish thinking it through so that you could get up again and say that you actually had a breakthrough. And now I would look at that more from an agnostic perspective, but it's really the same thing. In life, we go down to the altar and we have this sense that we need to give up something in our life, but we don't really want to give it up 100%. So we try to think it through, and there really isn't any thinking it through. It's either you are committed to something or you're not. And when you really get to the point where you're done challenging yourself and challenging your commitments, then you accept them. And then that's when you actually have a breakthrough. Just like how there's a lot of people who spend a lot of time doing addictive things or harmful things like drugs or alcohol, and then maybe one day they just stop. They stop because they hit rock bottom. They got to that point where something crazy has happened. Maybe they've risked their life, or they've risked somebody else's life, or they've almost lost a marriage or something. And then that's when they say, okay, I'm done. That's the wake-up call. when they realize they're not going to keep playing around. And we live in a time where there's so much people in crisis all the time. Everybody's got a crisis. Everyone's got something they're trying to work through, and everybody wants an easy solution. A pill that you can take, a prescription you can get, a psychologist you can go see, something that's going to just go make it all easier for a low fee that you can just pay and make your problems go away. But really, it's all about personal effort. You have to put in the effort, and if you're not willing to do that, then you're not going to have the results. But once you decide that you're ready, then you start getting to work, you do the things that you've committed to doing, and you're going to start to see some kind of results. It's amazing how much we're all probably guilty of saying that we just struggle to make something happen. And then if you do the math and you look and you say, okay, how much effort have you actually put into this? It's very little. It's like if I said I want to go write a book. Okay. It's hard to write a book. Yeah, I get that. But how much time did I actually spend every single day working on this? Or do I spend my whole life talking about it, and then in reality, I'm lucky if I spend 10 minutes in a day even actually doing anything about it? Well, then is it really a surprise if I don't produce results? At some point, you have to say, okay, today is the day. Now is the time. And I'm not going to hold back anymore, because now it means enough to me for me to actually see it through. And that's a choice that we all have. We can all do that if we get to the point where we want to. And if we don't want to, well, then we're gonna get more of the same. And that's a lesson of personal responsibility. You can't blame anyone but yourself for this stuff. And I think totality is a beautiful thing, because when you say, I'm going to be 100% true to this goal I've set, then it's very easy to measure, because you're either doing it or you're not. And truth is a pretty fair judge. Sometimes we want to look at life through the lens of excuses. But the reality is, fire will prove what sort of metal we have. So, if you're not producing results in your life, you probably just need to understand the fact that you don't really care about producing results in your life. And that's a harsh thing to come to terms with, because we want to say, oh yeah, but I tried. Okay, you tried. You tried, but you didn't produce a winning result, which means you didn't care. That's the bottom line. Because if you cared, you would have made the sacrifice necessary to make it more than just try. There's a lot of people, sometimes maybe it's not you, maybe it's that you're the victim of this. There's a lot of people who will always be there to tell you that they tried. And they want you to forgive them and accept them. And every time they say, oh, well, I'm trying to do better, they want you to show sympathy for that. But next time it's going to be the same basic line again. It's always going to be, well, I'm trying. So at what point does try turn into actually following through and keeping your word? Because if all you ever do is screw up again and then go back and say, well, I'm trying to do better, at some point, all you are is a liar. And that's not that you aren't good enough. It's that you don't want to do good, to do good with your life. That's what it means. And Nobody should be including people in their life who don't actually want to be true to themselves. And if you don't want to be true to yourself, then you probably shouldn't be part of other people's lives. Being honest with yourself is probably the first foundational thing that we can do to prepare ourselves for growth in personal relationships and in life. And it's very easy to go through life kind of deceiving ourselves, always thinking that we're the victim of something when really we just haven't committed. So if you feel like you're not getting where you need to go in life, ask yourself if you've really hit rock bottom and got to the place where you actually mean it, or if you're just saying that you want change when the reality is you want an easy way out. Life is not necessarily going to be easy. There's going to be times you have to lose sleep for it. There's going to be times when you have to do things when you don't feel like doing them. When, you're going to have to keep your word even though you don't necessarily feel like you want to anymore. And that's all part of being responsible and being faithful and doing your duty. So do your duty whether you want to in the moment or not. And I'll close with this thought. Scripture that says no man who puts his hand to the plow and then looks back is fit to serve in the kingdom of heaven. I think it's Luke. But I like that verse because what it's saying is when you go out there and you say, okay, I'm going to be the farmer, I'm going to go plow the field. But then as soon as you start plowing the field, you turn around and you think, oh, well, maybe I would like to go do something else. So you can't do good things in your life when you are having that kind of mentality. You can't be successful when you're always looking for a way out. It's like the person who wants to have a job until you give them a chance to have the job, to do the job, and then they want to stand there with their hands in their pocket because they don't actually want to work. And so every single opportunity that comes for them to waste time and avoid doing actual work, they will take up that opportunity because they really don't want to actually work. Well, that's fine. But if that's who you are, you're not going to achieve really good results in your life. So, be true to yourself. And if you actually want change in your life, back it up with actual sacrifice. Not a partial sacrifice, but a whole sacrifice. To put everything you've got on that altar and say, okay, I'm done playing around. And now I'm going to do the things that I've spent my life talking about doing. The time has to be today. Maybe it's the book you wanted to write. Maybe it's a relationship you wanted to pursue. Maybe it's being a more credible leader in the workforce. Maybe it's making a clean break from corrupt influences. So many different things. For every one of us is a different thing. That's our Achilles heel. But for all the things that we say that we want to do, it just doesn't do us any good if it's always just talk and we're always waiting for a more convenient time, because now is never that time. Make now the time. for you to keep your word and be true to yourself. As always, good luck on your adventure. Thanks for watching.